The moon is haunted, so we built a mall on it. All hail to SPACEMALL! Greetings, bones and ghouls. It is time again for Halloween in July. We're playing spooky games to have a spooky good time, and I'm deeply discounting the yearly rate on patreon.com/charlatanwonder to get you all on board for the Scare-a-thon. And to sweeten the deal, anyone who pledges at any tier on a yearly basis gets the patron patch. And as you know, to get you all cooking along with all the new recipes we're going to be doing for this spooky season, anyone who pledges yearly at the $5 recipe tier or higher gets their own patron apron as a thank you gift for your pledge. This is the only way you can get these. They are not for sale. They can only be obtained as thank you gifts for pledging yearly during Halloween in July. And just as a reminder, because these are thank you gifts, I take care of the shipping, and I can and have a ton of experience shipping these aprons to basically anywhere in the world, so don't sweat the details about your apron crossing the Atlantic. Those details are my problem. But there's even more going on this year. You see, I totally get that not everyone is in the right position to be making a big yearly pledge this time of year because the economy certainly is economying, but you still want to make that pledge count. Well, that's why I made the Pledge-O-Meter. Any pledge, yearly or monthly, on Patreon itself, or as a YouTube membership, a Ko-Fi donation, even Twitch subs, all count to the Pledge-O-Meter. Through your combined power, we can unlock all sorts of goals for everyone. Cursed stream marathons, like doing the Garden of Bon Bonthology all at once. Bonus rewards for the yearly pledges, like stickers, and maybe even a shirt. Then there's special videos to be unlocked, like delving into if the Zelda games are immersive sims. Special cooking segments, like grilling, which requires going outside, and Gamer Thanksgiving, which requires disappointing my entire family, and maybe even a cooking zine. And if we somehow get to the big 1,000 on the Pledge-O-Meter, I will abandon all of my morals and finally make that Fear and Hunger video. Really, for our first foray into the spooky zone, we're going to the moon, to a mall on the moon. Intro Routine. Routine is a game where you play as a systems admin who has to personally fly up there and fix the mall's computer system yourself, which sounds like one hell of a support ticket. Oh, also there's some sort of air quality issue too. Nothing serious, just whatever you do, do not take off your EVA suit while you're up here. It's up to you to make your way into SPACEMALL, reboot the computer system, and get the Wi-Fi working again so we can all get space hot dogs on a stick as capitalism intends. We're gonna put a Pizza Hut on the moon, baby! But something still feels off. Did the security bots kill everyone here, or was it something else? What's this about an experimental facility that's been closed off for decades? Well, we'll get to that in a bit. Real quick though, this game's got some history, and it's worth talking about. This was a game that was announced and started development 13 years ago. When I first heard this, I thought there was some sort of big mystery to it and went a-looking, and turns out there's no mystery. I just checked on their website, and it's just that Lunar Entertainment is literally 3 people who were working on this game part-time fresh out of college. Of course it's gonna take them a long time to get something of this caliber done, and they're gonna need to take breaks to pursue other parts of life and put food on the table. That's just how things are. Eventually they got with a publisher to help them get it out the door, and we got Routine in late 2025. If anything, it's impressive how much has been gotten done by just these 3 people. This started out as something that the original developer, who was mainly a 3D modeler, described as something like Dear Esther that evolved into a more fleshed out survival horror style game with a hell of a puzzle system in it. There's cool lore, freaky monsters, and the SPACEMALL. Welcome to SPACEMALL. It's a cassette punk future of 1999, where we're up here on the moon trying to figure out why the mall isn't selling as many of their marketable plushies of the mascot IC as usual. This involves resetting a lot of systems and getting access to the mall proper. And to do that, we're gonna need the Cosmonaut Assistance Tool, or the CAT. The CAT is this game's viewfinder, flashlight, scanning tool, security pass, and the closest thing to a gun you can get. There's the maintenance mode that literally just discharges a bolt of electricity to force reset misbehaving hardware, and there's no safety on it. Gives a whole new meaning to the term negligent discharge. You do get a couple modules that let you use the cat in new ways, but it's the only item you're really going to get in this game. The cat is also how you use save points and access notes to see what you need to do. It does just about everything for you, but it comes with one setback. This thing is clumsy like no one's business. The cat is big, bulky, and handles like the literal VCR with a pistol grip attached to it that it is. You gotta pull this thing out, turn the whole thing sideways, and then find the right button to activate Wi-Fi, degauss the viewfinder, or turn on your security pass. All things that you really don't want to be fumbling around with when there might be something chasing you. I mentioned Wi-Fi just a second ago, and something that I appreciate about Routine's retrofuture is that it doesn't pretend that advancements in reality just don't exist, but rather incorporate them into the world. You do indeed use Wi-Fi to access your save features and notes, and it also sort of acts like casting to a device like we can do in real world. I think it's kind of odd that I can't do any of this on the viewfinder of the cat, but then again, well, that's probably a gameplay thing, so I can't save anywhere that I might get a soft lock or a def loop. I also don't think I really want to be navigating this menu on this little screen. Routine has its own world, complete with its own operating systems for its computers, which, while Spartan, we can handwave that away as wanting a more stripped down operating system for your company machines. There's email and other computer systems controlling things, and you can see how this world works. As for how we work in this world, well, it's a lot of key code hunting. It's key code hunting where the game is built around it, so it's going to be good key code hunting, and Lunar Software had the common sense to scramble the codes every playthrough so that you can't just walk through blitz your way through the game and miss most of the challenges and therefore the fear. That being said, at least for the first half of this game, I did have a hard time finding out exactly what they wanted me to do in a certain segment, which turned out to be one of the most obvious things ever. They had just literally shown me what to do not even 10 minutes ago. It ended up walking in circles right by where I was supposed to be doing the thing for like a good 30 minutes. This could have been streamer debuff, but also a guy in chat who played the game before me also got what I needed to do wrong. The mall can be a bit confusing at times as to what exactly it wants you to do. It gets much better in the latter half of the game though, but hoo boy does it get harder. The second half of the game is basically centered around one big key code hunting puzzle, using all the tools you found up to that point, all while something beyond description is hunting you. There's also the more traditional find a thing to open this door puzzling after that, but the center point of the second half of the routine is getting into this bathroom. This is a big puzzle, like you're gonna need to start writing stuff down and putting it on sticky notes on your monitor kind of puzzle. It's gonna take all the tools you found up until that point, and it's gonna take some good problem solving skills on top of that to figure out how to open this dang door. I know I'm simplifying here, but really getting into that bathroom was a really interesting part of the game when I finally worked up the courage to do it, especially since, just like the numbers for the key codes, the places you need to find the keys are randomized too. So the cat and its modules are your second best friend in the game. The zappy thing that I'm probably not supposed to be doing as much as I do it is great and all, but it doesn't get me everywhere I need to be. The first module you get is the Ultra View, which is your flashlight. I think the other module has a lesser flashlight that lets you see a little bit in the dark too, but if you want to see in pitch dark, you're gonna need to turn on the Ultra View. Oh, by the way, sorry if this video looks like deep fried butts. YouTube's compression never does well with dark video, and I don't think we ever got like HDR settings on YouTube either. So just take my word for how nice this game looks, because, well, it doesn't matter what I record or encode this video in, it's gonna turn to mush once it gets uploaded. Sorry. The Ultra View also, more importantly, has an infrared sensor that detects stuff. I don't know. I think this is basically just a black light with extra steps because it lets you see fingerprints and whatever was used to mark this tree. Later on, we get the security clearance device in the old labs, and well, it lets you open doors. I think it's a Li-Fi type of deal, but however it works, getting through doors is very important. You know what's even more important? Scaring off the monster. The flash this thing lets off to open doors is pretty bright, to the point where there's a warning right on the manual about how you can easily go blind from it. And unlike the finicky, battery-intensive maintenance shocks, you can let the security module off a ton of times, and you don't even need to aim this thing. Just point it in the general direction of whatever the heck this thing is and let it off a few times until it disappears or it gets stunned long enough to run like hell. Be careful though, as eventually this thing's gotta figure out how to cover its eyes. There's one more tool that you have, and it's easily the most important one you've got: your ability to hear. No, really. This moon installation is supposed to be really quiet, since especially in the non-consumer segments, they've got to keep quiet for instruments, and also everyone is long dead. Robots make noise. A lot of noise. And if they see you, they aren't gonna get tired, and it can be pretty hard to break their line of sight. You move slow in that big clunky EVA suit of yours, so you're not gonna be leaving these things in the dust anytime soon. You gotta listen. Listen for their big, clunky footsteps, meaning that one of them has gone out. Listen for the noise they make when they see you. Listen for the noise they make when they're scanning the area because they've lost sight of you. You don't have the time or the luxury of poking your head out to see if they're gone, or looking back when you're running to see if you're getting any distance from them. So listen well, because you're gonna need to get good at that for later. And now it's time for the Spookies. Routine is a game that'll almost have you in the first half. I initially couldn't see what the fuss was about when I started playing this game on stream, but it was because the entire first half of the game is basically a tutorial, a fake out. The big stompy robots are certainly freaky, especially since they have those uncanny eyes and mouths with teeth in them for some reason, but they're also really easy to bamboozle even if they find you in the first place. Sure, there's some spooky stuff in the ambience, but nothing spookier than a real-world dead mall. Yeah, it'll be pretty scary the first time one of the robots starts chasing you, and they do get a second wind once you're in the dorms, where it's a lot harder to break line of sight and circle back, but once you figure out where to hit these guys to shut them down, they aren't really all that fear-inducing. To their credit though, you cannot kill them. The best you can do is stun them into inactivity for a bit, but also if you try to double tap, they just get right back up. I guess that starts them too. All of this is a tutorial. Yeah, sure, there's the learn the control stuff at the very beginning, like getting out of your living quarters and using the cat to get into SPACEMALL, but everything before you go deal with the SPACEMALL's computer system is essentially tutorial. In hindsight, the robots are intentionally loud and easy to pinpoint their location from across the map, and they're fairly forgiving too. You usually get one gotcha from these guys if they actually catch up to you, where after they toss you to the ground, they stop for a solid 10 seconds because they're trying to remember if they left the stove on at home. Sure, there are some freaky sounds in SPACEMALL, but there's also just enough ambient noise to where every little sound doesn't set off alarm bells like it will later on. Routine goes from a run-of-the-mill horror game to really, really scary once you get to the ward. So Routine starts off as decently tense as you're trapped in a mall with a bunch of killer robots and conspicuous body bags all over the place, but there's still some noise and signs of life around you. Then you get into the ward. You're actually not quite sure how you got there. The last thing you remember was turning off the mall's computer system, and then things got a little weird. It's quiet in here. Dead quiet. The mall might have been a scary setting because it's a place that's normally supposed to be bustling with life, that's conspicuously empty, but the ward is very clearly a place that you are not supposed to be. Maybe no one's supposed to be here anymore, but someone else is here. I cannot emphasize enough how impossibly quiet it is in the ward when you first enter it. The place has no power running to any of its systems down to the doors, and you've got to go manually turn them back on as you look for means to open them. Then there's how when you get into your menu, the previously short but well-composed notes by the play character get a little, weird. I also appreciate how all this game's menus and such are in-universe. It's always a nice touch. But then, through the course of trying to get to the bottom of whatever happened here, or at least press further into this facility, you get something's attention. Time for a little confession. I noped out of this game after awakening, or perhaps getting the attention of the entity. I started this game in early March and hadn't played anything seriously spooky in quite a while, so something like this was grounds for me to put it off for a while. I went and played the next 2 games for Halloween in July, rebuilding my spooky tolerance until I was able to come back to this game and finish it in late May. And I did try to come back to it earlier. There were a couple times where I tried to boot it up through April, but I usually got less than 10 minutes in before nope, right again, without leaving the safe area. Eventually, after a bit more spooky stuff, I was able to work up the courage to do the big scavenger hunt while this thing stalked around the ward. Okay, so first things first, what do you mean I can't even see this damn thing? Yes, the entity is invisible, or at least you can't see it. But it can definitely see you. It makes a lot of noise, but not nearly as much as the robots did. It doesn't help things though that the events leading up to letting this thing loose in the ward now has the whole area creaking and making all sorts of creepy noises where it was once quiet as a grave. So you can't see this thing. Correction, you can't see this thing with your own eyes. Something has gotten the better of you, and now you don't visually process the information of the giant murder thing that's stalking the halls around you. There's a workaround though. Whatever is in your head has figured out how to block what you see in front of you, but it can't figure out what the cat is or how to obfuscate things in the cat's viewfinder. If you want to see this thing and have a chance to get away from it, you have to look at it through the tiny little screen on your cat. Go ahead, zoom in and try to get a better look at this thing at the cost of your entire field of view and mobility to move around and such. The reality of the situation is that you're going to be quietly creeping around and pulling out your cat every time you approach a threshold to sweep the whole area. Because while the entity isn't nearly as loud as the robots were, their footsteps will carry across rooms and it will be hard to pin down exactly where they are unless it's right on top of you and just made a big noise to alert you that it's got your number. This is where the security module comes in. If you loud out a few flashes of that thing point blank at the entity, provided that you got the drop on it, it will either stun it for long enough to let you run like hell out of there, or it'll just go away on its own. It's gonna take a lot more if it sees you, and if this isn't your first time having to use your get out of trouble free card, the entity might have the common sense to cover its eyes and the cat is now useless. And that's where things get weird. Sometimes this thing just ceases to exist if you catch it and blast it enough. Was it even there? And then you start being able to actually see it, and never mind, I don't want to see it anymore, make it go away. The real scare factor of the entity is not that you can't see the thing, or that if it gets the drop on you, you are done, no second chances like the robots. It's that you have no idea if this thing is actually there or not. The ward and the annex are a little too echoey to pinpoint where it is. Sometimes it's visible, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you think it's there, but it disappears way too fast when you hit it with a security thing for it to have actually been there, making you question if it was there in the first place. Jeez, this thing's gotta be one of the scariest solo monsters since the Gatherer in the original Amnesia, just with how it manages to stay ambiguous to its presence. Finally, unfortunately, it's not all high-level spookies. There are a few jump scares that aren't the cheapest things I've seen, but they are eye-roll worthy. There's a few later on when you're dealing with the entity, which are fine, but there's also quite a few in SPACEMALL and the residential area where you're like, oh geez, that inactive robot sure is in a conspicuous place where it looks like it's gonna get me on the way out of here. And then exactly that happens. These feel like filler scares for when you're not in a spot where the robots can effectively be a threat and you aren't in the ward yet. I'd almost write these off as more of that tutorial fake out that the first half of this game is, because the spike in quality once you're out of SPACEMALL is nuts. I think that's enough spookies on the moon for now. I think it's time for a little snack in the mall food court. In routine, there is a mall in space, and malls make me think of food courts, and food courts make me think of hot dog on a stick. Hot Dog on a Stick is a West Coast chain of counter-service food stalls that are almost always found in mall food courts where the staff are fitted down to the socks. They serve, well, hot dogs on a stick, dipped in a cornmeal-based batter, which in the United States we call corn dogs. They're the best things ever. They also serve cheese on a stick, which is basically the same thing, except instead of a hot dog in the middle, they have a brick of cheese. It's brilliant. And don't worry, I'm well aware of Korean-style hot dogs on a stick, which I understand are closer to pigs in a blanket than an American-style corn dog based on the batter they use. I actually tried to do the hot dog Cheeto coating for this video, but I'm more familiar with my shopping mall version than what they do in Korean-style restaurants, and I totally botched it. So we're doing corn dogs today. It all starts with the batter, which I initially messed up. I thought I was smart and assumed that I could just use corn muffin mix for the batter. This did not work. Do not do this. Not only did it do a terrible job of adhering to the hot dogs no matter how thick or thin I made the batter, but it does not stand up to deep frying and just disintegrates into the oil. I ended up looking for recipes for batter and went with this one by Natasha Kravchuk, which worked like a charm that I've linked in the description. I guess corn dog batter is one of those things like bread dough and how it's not something you should be trying to just wing it on, as other recipes looked very similar. The only major change I made to it is that I did not add the honey since my wife's allergic. I also followed along with how you gotta pat the dogs dry before dunking them in the batter, since quite a few of the recipes I checked say that this is a thing you gotta do. It seems to be pretty universal that you want these dogs as dry as possible. So get your hot dogs. I got these cheapo ones where it's like $1 for an 8-pack. Dry them off with paper towels and then get a stick through them. Shorter sticks where the bottom just barely sticks out worked better for me compared to longer skewers that I had to leave sticking out over the edge of the pot, which is also a safety hazard. Hey, you know what else we could put on a stick? Cheese. That's right, we're gonna cut up some bricks of cheese to roughly the size of hot dogs and stick them just like the dogs. Try to go slow with these because while they're much grippier than the hot dogs, they're more liable to split open than the dogs are. I'm doing some good old-fashioned sharp cheddar, and lately my wife has been craving pepper jack, so I'll do some of those too. We're even gonna do a few combo corn dogs. Now, something I learned that I'll pass on to you is that if you wanna do a half and half corn dog, put the halved hot dog on first, and then put the cheese on second so that it's facing the outside of the stick. The cheese is a lot grippier than the hot dog, and if the hot dog half of the corn dog is on the outside when you dunk them, they're probably gonna get sucked into the batter. Had to think on my feet for a bit for the half and half cheddar dogs, but it all worked out in the end. It's easier to get these on right the first time than having to re-stick these things midway through dipping. Speaking of dipping, let's move on to that. Okay, so take your batter and transfer it into a pitcher, or after a few dunks, you might want to transfer it to a smaller cup. It's fine sitting like this for a bit, so don't start heating the oil until you are ready to be babysitting that oil. Make sure you have an oil thermometer in that pot. Make sure there is plenty of clearance between the rim of the pot and the oil, like say at least 3 inches or so, and then heat the stuff to 375 degrees of freedom heat units or 190 funny baguette units. Once it gets to that temp, lower the heat, because what we're frying here is not going to be enough mass to offset the temperature of the oil. We can only really do 2 of these at a time since we can't have them fusing together, and 2 corn dogs won't be nearly enough cold mass inside of the hot oil to alter the temperature. Now take your naked dogs on a stick, give them a good dunk into the batter, don't be afraid to get your fingertips a little messy, and make sure to swirl it around a bit because you want to make sure that the bottom of your dogs are fully covered by batter before they go in. Now carefully lower 2 dogs at a time into the pot, making sure to add them in slowly and lower them in as to not disrupt the surface tension of your oil. Now, the batter recipe said to let it go for 3 minutes, which I tried and it worked well, but inexperienced, you can easily eyeball this. You need to be keeping your eye on the oil at all times anyway, so use a pair of heat-safe tongs to occasionally rotate the dogs, and then once they're a nice golden brown on the outside, use the tongs to slowly pull them out and move them to a paper towel-lined wire rack to drain for a bit to cool down, as you do not want to take a bite into literally boiling cheese. Lower in your next 2 and keep an eye on that oil temperature since it will be rising, and as we'll see, we need to lower the heat to keep it in the right zone. Once they're done, they're done. There's not much else you need to do for these aside from maybe adding some ketchup or mustard if you wanna, but this is literally tasty food on a stick. You don't even need a plate for these suckers. I'm not even gonna try to do nutrition facts for these since there are so many variables between what kind of hot dog you use and cheese and batter and so on, and you can theoretically do these with Costco hot dogs, by the way. I might try it. I will, as always, though, have a full standalone video with a written recipe breakdown over on patreon.com/charlatanwonder, where thanks to the Halloween and July special, I've deeply discounted my yearly rate, and anyone who pledges yearly gets the patron patch. And if you pledge yearly at the $5 recipe tier or higher, you get the patron apron too. Now let's get back into routine. Before we get into the world and story of Routine, I want to talk about the audio a bit more because unfortunately while this game is made by some skilled 3D modelers and is a damn good looking game, YouTube's compression doesn't like dark videos, and oh boy, there's a lot of darkness in Routine. Lucky for us, I can talk about the audio. Sure, there's some good ambience music to go with the cutscenes, but where Routine really shines is the Foley work. Stuff like the way you can hear your EVA suit and your cat bump against the ground when you need to crawl, the sound of water dripping onto the floor inside of the annex, the random creaks in the ward that just scare the crap out of you because you're never sure if the entity's nearby or if it's just this place is really old and recently been shaken up. You know what, I'm just gonna put like a minute of uninterrupted gameplay here so you can get a feel for what I mean. The sound design is what makes this game scary. The footfalls of the entity, the random creaking that puts you on edge, all the tactile stuff, that makes the game. A lot of care went into making this game sound as good as it looks, and that's what elevates this into being a noteworthy spooky game. Now, let's talk about the story and the world and all that good stuff. So no spoilers yet, because we're going to talk about the world and setting of Routine first. It's 1999 and you are an unnamed IT admin from the security department of Union Plaza, aka SPACEMALL, who has been sent up to Union Plaza to fix a pretty serious issue in person. Everyone is dead. It's indeterminate how long you were there before the mass lockdown happened or whatever is going on to make it mandatory to be in your EVA suit at all times, because if it had been as bad as it was, like right as they were sending you up, wouldn't they have sent some sort of more advanced recovery team with you? How long were you out if you're just now getting up and getting all stretched out and putting on your suit if when you get out, everything's looking like it's been abandoned for a while? So the problem is apparent. SPACEMALL's AI has a robot set to increase shareholder value, and the on-site IT people weren't able to turn it off before it created a huge windfall of capital by cutting payroll by any means necessary. Oops. We do an elaborate series of tasks to get through the mall and then into the room where the AI system is kept and shut the thing down. Funny. It keeps warning us not to do that, like it's trying to protect us from something. We black out for a bit, and after an odd vision, we find ourselves in the ward, the research outpost on the moon. It's never explicitly said how far from Union Plaza the ward is or how exactly we got there, but it's clear that we are not supposed to be here by the fact that there is literally no sign of anyone else being here for a very long time. Mild spoilers from here on. The ward was a research outpost made by PRISM, the same people that made SPACEMALL. After some odd seismic activity was detected on the moon about 20 years ago, which I looked it up, and while the moon is not tectonically active, lunar quakes are a thing and they're believed to be brought on by the tidal gravity, so they sent a bunch of dudes up here in the 70s because these special quakes were something they were particularly interested in, particularly what was making them. Whatever they found, they seem to have stopped researching it at some point because everyone was having some sort of psychosis that turned out to be some sort of horrible moon infection. It turns you into moon mold. A lot of what happened here is found through some very old notes and logs found laying around the ward, and we'll get into that in a sec. We've got bigger problems. For some reason, we now need to go to a place called the Canal. It's not immediately explained why, but we'll know soon enough. We've got bigger problems. We woke up some thing that's living here, and we need to avoid it while we finish whatever research was abruptly stopped when everyone got sick 20 years ago. It's while we try to gain access to the rest of the facilities that we notice that a lot of the ward has been reconfigured into some sort of psychological testing facility, checking our ability to perceive motion, spatial awareness of sound, if we can discern what certain objects are, almost as if it's trying to help us ground ourselves in reality by giving us easy things to figure out, almost like a calibration system for our senses and reality. Notes around here mention that the room we woke up in when we first got to the ward is some sort of countermeasure for more extreme cases of psychological deterioration. Okay, full spoilers time. You know what to do if you don't want them. Going, gone. During a brief trip into the annex to upgrade our security clearance at the founder's office, we're hit with a big whammy. We have been infected with EL9, the name of the mold that seems to have made everyone here go crazy and get obsessed with the canal. EL9 messes with our perception. That's why we normally can't see the entity, and it also seems to be able to influence people's desires to its own benefit, which is probably why we're so inexplicably drawn to the canal despite this having nothing to do with our initial task. We get into the innermost parts of the ward and see that at some point someone here was so crazy with this mold's influence that they put EL9 infected bodies directly in the path of the ventilation fans. There's also this crazy alien thing they found one day that broke into the ward and then died choking on an apple that might be the source of all this. We're getting some crazy hallucinations ourselves. All of our goals are now get to the canal. We eventually get there and there is a lot of that mold growing in the canal, and then I don't think this hallucination is a good thing. We don't really get an immediate denouement to the IT guy's story. Instead, before the end credits, we're shown a report that comes from the year 2025. They sent people back to the moon because I guess the mall was deemed a total loss. This recovery operation seems to have failed too because it ends with the final image that the last member of the team sent, and it's the canal again with way more EL9 tendrils coming out of its walls. Maybe we weren't supposed to be messing with whatever's up here. There's a lot I probably missed and a lot more that's going on here. If you're interested, there's a guide written on Steam by someone who was able to compile every last scrap of notes and audio logs in the game and piece it all together in a timeline. I suggest playing the game first before looking at that though. There is a lot going on here and you'll be liable to miss a lot even if you are looking at this guide, watching this video, and playing the game for yourself if you're not being careful. I also really appreciate how Routine put enough thought into their world building and their game, and also how a lot of the important lore stuff is either somewhere where the monsters can't get to you, or as is more often the case, the monsters won't spawn in until you do a certain fairly obvious thing, meaning that you can go look around and collect all the notes before you have to hide from the thing. Meaning that, you won't be too busy running away from the monster to learn all the lore. Lunar Software put a lot of thought into this world presented in Routine, and it's great that even a silly YouTube man like me is able to take it all in. When I finally worked up the courage to play all of it, I loved Routine. It's as spooky as hell, has great visual and sound design, and the entity has got to be one of the scarier antagonists in a horror game I've seen in a while. Some people complain that Routine is shorter than they would have liked, however, according to my own Steam stats and my recordings, it took me an even 8 hours to get through the whole thing, which, for reference, Amnesia: The Dark Descent took me a bit under 7. I think some folks just forgot that horror games are supposed to be shorter because the longer you're in a setting, the more acclimated to it you're gonna get and the scare factor wears off. It helps things that Routine is fairly priced too. It's only $25 full price on Steam. As some of you might know, I prefer not to measure my enjoyment or value of a game in raw hours played, as that leads to a propensity of games that are hundreds of hours long on paper, but have a whole lot of wandering around an oversized map picking space barriers or whatever to fill time. So instead, I prefer to value my games based on if they outweigh their price in an equivalent source of entertainment. At $25, Routine will get you 2 movie tickets, and I think this provided about as much enjoyment as 2 pretty solid movies. I encourage you all to make that judgment call for yourself though. Before we sign off, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching and ask you to like and subscribe so that not only will you see the next Halloween in July video as soon as it's out, but others will get a chance to see it too thanks to your engagement. If you want to support the channel, there's patreon.com/CharlatanWonder where you get early videos, full recipes for the cooking segments, updates about what I'm doing behind the scenes, and so much more as a thank you for keeping this channel going strong. And if you prefer, there's also YouTube memberships where you can get the videos just as early as the Patreon supporters do. And as you know, it's still Halloween in July, meaning that not only have I discounted my yearly pledges so you can save big on your support, but also anyone who pledges yearly gets Patron Patch, and anyone who pledges yearly at the $5 recipe tier or higher gets the Patron Apron as a thank you gift. And every pledge on Patreon, every YouTube membership, every Ko-Fi counts towards the Pledge-O-Meter, yearly or not, which we can unlock all sorts of cool rewards like special videos and stickers for the yearly pledges, and the pin can come back, community game night, and so much more. Now let's sign off. Remember that no matter what you do, be it 3D modeling, pencil sketching, or making movies, what you do is not content. It is your art. Your art is special and is the product of your skills, hopes, and aspirations, and it should never be reduced down to content. So get out there and fight for your art by fighting against the contentification of everything. Stay saucy.
Sir, can I help you? Sir, that is not for you. Sir, I have to assemble this before we can sit in it. We gotta get this done. I am trying to put this together. I'm organizing the pieces. I'm getting everything laid out where I can easily access it. No, sir. At least let me put the cushion on. No, off. I'm gonna suitcase scoop you. Ooh, I got you. I know. Look, just please be patient. I'm going to assemble this. And then, when it's assembled, I will sit with you in it. And we can rock it back and forth like the stupid little baby you are. No, not that one either. Actually, okay, let me just get the plastic out and I'll let you sit on that one.